This is some exciting stuff. We've obviously taken a lot of time and a lot of work to kind of bring a lot of the ideas that we tested over time together into kind of a new, more unified format to bring together the racing that's not just the Cup, but also the racing we do in our typically old-fashioned Pro-Am scene and stuff like that. So first off, we've got the licenses, which we'll talk about here, and the first one of those is a student license. So the way licenses work, they're going to kind of enable you to do certain things. There'll be something that you'll want to work towards and work your way up. So the first of those is the student license, and you can acquire this by attending at least one session of racing school. So anybody that's newcomer to the racing scene when it comes to XGR, they'll have to at least dip into racing school. That way they can learn, basic controls, stuff like that, how to join in, with a party launch for an event. Things like that Shacknew will be helpful with. And when you earn this license, it'll grant access to race in the AM races.
Oh yeah, man. I think first of all, these licenses are such a cool system. And I really like that people have to participate in a student session first. Doesn't matter how they do, but it kind of gives them that first test of partying up, and getting warmed up and making sure they're ready for the AM races. And I think that's really cool. Now, AM racing is something that we've been toying with for a while. Shacknew has been doing the student showdowns, and we looked for a way to make these official. So we now have AM racing, and this is really the entry-level racing for amateurs. These races aren't broadcast, which allows us to host them frequently without having all the added pressures of making sure that these races are live streamed. And the format is something that we have used before. It's kind of like the previous Pro-Am races. We've got 5 heats where you can finish first and secure a spot in the single main event that's coming. They're traditional lap counts and time limits, the ones that you're used to from our traditional races. And this kind of ups the student showdown to a more official type race. Then we've got the heat wins determining the top grid for the main event, and anybody else that finishes any heat will go to the overflow. And the overflow is something that you'll recognize from the Stanton Cup. And yeah, again, these are really the entry-level amateur races for students and amateurs.
Yeah, really excited for, like you said, the student showdowns to have a more intertwined and permanent home at XGR, to be part of the system as a whole and really kind of bring everything together. So this is going to be a really competitive race for those that are newer to the racing scene and trying to get their feet wet, and a good stepping stone for the further divisions, which is really exciting. So after folks manage to get their student license, racing some AM racing, the next goal is going to be to pick up your AM license. And so you can acquire this by finishing a AM main event in the allotted time. We'll talk about AM's races just in a second. And once you acquire this AM license, it'll give you access to still race in the AM races, but also to race in the Pro-Am races, kind of as you trying to climb up through the divisions. So really cool stuff.
Well, let's talk about the Pro-Am races, because this is now considered mid-tier qualification racing, and this is really interesting too. Yeah. Again, these races are not broadcast, which allows us to host more of them and makes it easier, more accessible. And again, the goal here is to have as much racing as possible. The Pro-Am races are different now. These are not the typical events that you've seen last year. This is overhauled to be a stepping stone to the pro races, and a place where pros and AMs come together. Because of course in the AM races, you've only got students and AM racers, but in the Pro-Am, you've got pros and AM racers, and students aren't in yet. So first of all, we require 20 racers to start these. And that's because we want to make sure that there is this competitive, like a competitive level, I want to say, to these races to ensure that making it to the pro is as difficult as the previous Pro-Am, as the next Pro-Am, and all year there's going to be a huge amount of competition there. Now the Pro-Ams consist of 10 heat races, and heat races only. There are no main events here. They're traditional lap count and time limits for the heats, and the heat winners qualify and determine the top 10 grid for the upcoming pro race, and that doesn't happen on the same day, but more on the pro races in a minute. Now, if you finish second in a heat, you also qualify for the pro race, but you go back to the overflow. Again, that overflow we mentioned before. And the cool thing here then is that you kind of have a chance at a top spot by winning a heat, but you can qualify as well by finishing second. So in total, I think with 10 heats, we're looking at lots of opportunity to qualify for the upcoming pro.
So up next, the thing to be shooting for will be your pro license, right? This is going to be the Pinnacle of Division Racing at XGR.
Hell yeah.
So the pro license is acquired by winning a ProAm heat race. So this is very specific. It's going to be a little bit challenging, right? Because we come into these ProAms, we have a bare minimum of racers required, right? You're going to have a lot of fast guys there. So winning one of these heat races and getting your pro license is going to be a big step in your racing career at XGR. But we think it's going to be very, very cool, something for folks to shoot for over time and get better and better. It'll be really exciting. And once you get this pro license, it grants you access to race in the Pro-Am and the pro races. No longer can you race in the student races. Obviously, we don't want pros, they're sandbagging in the student races. That's supposed, or in the AM races. That's supposed to be a competitive environment for people that are still learning. So really exciting stuff to get your pro license and be able to flex that and be able to have access to the pinnacle of racing in XGR.
Love it. Absolutely. I just want to mention as well, if you look at the license section on the left, the top right of each shows a little graphic, and those graphics will be displayed behind your name as well on the Discord server. So these are your licenses. You'll either be a single green stripe, 2 yellow stripes, or 3 pro stripes. And this is what you'll be flaring for the rest of the year. I also want to mention that those with a veteran rank that they've earned in the previous year, so 2952, are kind of on the level of amateur already. So they have access to ProAm Racing to get into the pros, but they will not be allowed to participate in the AM races because we don't want to mix up our veterans from last year, which are practically pro racers, with the students. So that's a really important, like a small stepping stone, a small perk you have as a veteran of the previous year. So let's talk about the pro racing then, the pinnacle of spaceship racing. These races are meant to be broadcasted. These are the races where everything that has happened previously gets combined. The students that have made it to the AMs, the pros that have qualified for the pros, they all make it to the pinnacle, and this is what we broadcast. We'll do 3 main events with Olympic scoring. You've seen this during the Stanton Cup already, and this makes a comeback now. There are no heats. The starting grid has already been set. It is time for long racing and lots of it. And fast racing with minimum downtime as well to make it really exciting for the audience. We'll have the traditional lap counts and time limits once more that you're used to from our main events with Olympic scoring in the Stanton Cup. And what's important to note for the pro race is that there are 2 things that you require to enter. I mentioned before you need to qualify, of course, by finishing first or second in a heat, but you also require that pro license. So just having a pro license is not enough to race in a pro race. You have to qualify in the previous Pro-Am. And this really combines the AM, the Pro-Am, and the Pro into a single sort of event that spans maybe a month. Could be anything, but they'll be pretty close together, and they all take place on the same racetrack as well, which is really important.
Very excited to see this play out. We obviously want these pro races to be, as labeled there, the pinnacle of spaceship racing in the verse, right? So the whole point is that the best of the best come to slug it out, and may the best racer win. It's going to be really, really fun.